Okay. Hi. Um, it's really good to see everyone. Can you hear me and see me well? I would really like if you could post it in the comments that you can indeed see me and hear me. Yes, yes, yes. Perfect. Okay. Um, okay. Just real quickly, technical thingy. My co-host Jeremy, could you please mute your mic? I forgot to tell you to do that. Perfect. So, welcome. Okay, great. Welcome to our fourth webinar. I can hardly believe it myself. So I'm wondering how many of you guys have seen my previous webinars? Could you write in the chat, have you seen 0, 1, 2, or 3 webinars? What did you think about them? 0. Okay, well, I hope you're gonna like it. And fourth, oh, someone is a fan. Perfect. Well, I'm really glad to see so many people joining. So today we're gonna have a very special webinar because I will not be alone. I will be joined by Jeremy Rodda, who is our longtime user and an avid fisherman. So he's gonna share his experience in fishing, and he's gonna share his insights on how to plan a fishing trip. And so he'll be the star today. I'm very excited. Can you guess how this happened? So Jeremy emailed our user support with a very polite letter saying that he has a podcast about fishing, and then he uses Windy.app as a source for weather forecasts to plan his fishing trips. And I tuned to his podcast, and I thought, this guy really knows what he's doing, and he has a nice voice. I thought, why don't we do a webinar together? Because I know that thousands of fishermen use our app, and they might as well benefit from what Jeremy has learned. So luckily Jeremy agreed, and this is why we're here today. Okay, this is where you can, sorry, I forgot to mention, this is where you can watch our previous webinars on our YouTube page, and this webinar will also be there for you forever to watch. So now I want to know a little bit about you. How do you fish? Do you use a boat, or do you fish from the coast? What kind of fish you're after? Do you fish on the lake or in the river or in the sea? And if your fishing is not your only outdoor activity, then what else you do? I am very interested to know who came to this webinar. And Jeremy will also be very interested to read what kind of audience is lake and sea fishermen. Okay, boat fishing, kayak fishing, yacht cruising. Okay, perfect. Somebody fishes everywhere. And what kind of fish are you after? Maybe there's a particular tricky fish for you to catch. Maybe there are some fish that depend, that their behavior depends heavily on the weather. I'm really interested. Okay. Jeremy, I hope you're reading this as well. It's very interesting stuff here. Okay. Salmon fishing. Okay. Well, I am excited. I hope you will learn something new today. If you are, if you know everything yourself, like you're a seasoned fisherman, maybe you can compare notes, and that would be great too. You're very welcome to ask questions, and my colleagues will answer them if they can, and there will be time for questions to Jeremy at the end. Before I give the mic to Jeremy, I'm going to make a few announcements about what our team has been up to. Then Jeremy is going to introduce himself and talk about all the important parameters, meaning all important weather and marine parameters for a fishing trip. And then he's going to talk about how he plans a fishing trip, like he looks at the forecast in Windy.app and how he makes a decision. Then there will be time for your questions. If there's questions would be about fishing, Jeremy will take them. If they will be about Windy.app, I will take them. If we do not answer your question, or for example, you're watching this in a recording, you're very welcome to post your questions to the comment section in the description and below the description of this live stream, and our team will get back to you and answer your questions, and then we're going to wrap up. I think this will not be a very heavy webinar, and so let's begin with the announcement. Oh no, sorry, I forgot to say. So Jeremy will not be speaking that much about pro features of the app for fishing. He will not be focused on that, but if you ever wanted to try the pro version, we have a promo code for you for 7 days. So you open this link on our website, Windy.app/pro code, and then you enter this pro code. You hit go, and then you choose the login. If you don't have one, you can create one, and then you log in the same way in the app. So it has a few steps, but I'm sure you'll get there. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to ask our user support. You're also welcome to share this promo code, so it's not private or anything. I'd really appreciate it if you also share this webinar. I know that it's common among fishermen to have like a local WhatsApp groups, and if you post the link to the webinar there, of course, if you like it, I'd really appreciate it because then we can spread the word and awareness even further. Okay, so announcements. Number one is on the Android app. We added ocean currents to the map. Then we have finally released the Apple Watch widget. It's been a couple of weeks. We've had some good feedback, and we're very excited. Have you guys tried it? Can you let me know in the chat? I'm gonna read. Have you installed the Apple Watch widget in case you have it? No. Does it look good? It has the wind, the gusts, the waves for the next 9 hours, and then it also has a compass, so it will move. It will move with you. Well, if you haven't tried it and you do have a Apple Watch and you are using it, I really urge you to try it and then tell us what else, what other widgets we should do. Okay. Another thing so that is already released. This one is something we're working on. We're developing widgets for the smartphone screen. You will see that for iOS, there will be a dark theme and a white theme. Sorry, the light theme. And this is what we think the design is going to look like. My team is telling me it's going to be out in a couple of weeks. So if you want us to add, like, have a Solinar chart or something, let us know. Sorry. Another thing, we have an app called WindHub. There is a special webinar about it. In the iOS version, you can create a route. And now they have added the possibility to save this route and edit it later. So WindHub is the app that is created by our team, and it is specifically for boating and sailing and fishing. So we know that a lot of fishermen also use that app, but a lot of fishermen still use Windy.app, and we're happy about that. So our website news is that you can now buy a lifetime plan there, and it will be active both on the web and in our app. And we have started adding pro features to the website. So at the moment, we've added 2 more weather models, which are ECMWF and Icon 7. And that is available in the pro version of the website. But we do plan to add more, and we are open to suggestions. So my website development team asked me to ask you if you know that we have a wind map on our website. This is a part of this is a screenshot from this wind map, and as you can see, it has depth of the seabed, and it has fishing spots. So I'm wondering if you guys use it, and if you do, or maybe you don't know about it, but if you do and you want us to add something, then please let us know. It's Windy.app /map. Okay, does this? I'm pretty sure not many people know about it, but this is something we're working on, and we will be developing in the future. Okay, the next thing is we're still looking for people to help us improve Windy.app. By this I mean that we need our users' eyes and our users' feedback on the prospect designs, on some new ideas. What I'm asking you to do, if you do want to help Windy, there's a link to a form that you can fill out where we ask you who are you, what do you do, and what can you do for us? Can you jump on a Zoom call with our researcher, or maybe take a survey, or look at our prototype and give feedback? It would be appreciated if you have time, and if you want to do that, please sign up and we'll contact you. So very soon I'm going to be handing the microphone over to Jeremy. I think he should be ready quite soon. You can see him.
Hello.
Hello, I think we can hear you well. So now I'm going to shut up and let you speak, and I'm gonna click on your slides. Okay. Oh, I forgot your video. Sorry.
Hello. My
Okay.
name is Jeremy. I've been using the Windy.app for about 4 years now. I've been obsessed with fishing for about 23 years. These days I fish from my little boat about twice a week when I can. And as mentioned, I have a podcast and an Instagram, and the links will be in the description, and they'll be around. So I'm going to tell you the most important weather and marine parameters to me as a boater and a fisherman, and then I'll show you how I typically use the app to maximize the tools and knowledge for when you get on the water. Sorry about the lawnmower. It sounds like they're mowing with a lawnmower upside down outside. Not much I can do, but I'll speak loudly, and hopefully it'll I'll be the master of the audio. So number one, I fish in so the boat is a 15 by 4 foot K-boat style inflatable. It's narrow and low to the water, but very stable and super fuel efficient, and a lot more seaworthy than people think, as long as the conditions are okay. I think my AirPods just cut out for a second. So the boat I use is a 15 by 4 foot K-boat inflatable. It's narrow, low to the water, very stable, fuel efficient, and a lot more seaworthy than people think. If you look at that slide, I'm pretty low to the water, but I've been through some tough shit, and it does pretty well. So as long as the conditions are right, I have no problem going offshore with it. So yeah, so I fish in Southern California. Every climate and oh my Lord, okay, uh, has its own set of parameters. So here's ours. We typically have a daily windy afternoon and calm mornings, so we're able to fish year round in relatively uh, mild climate because we're in a Mediterranean climate. We have a mixed semi-diurnal tide schedule, which might be a little bit different from where you are. Um, but I just bring that up because we have two high tides, two low tides. Some other areas in the world might just have one high tide and low tide, and that might affect how you prioritize your day. Like if I get two high tides, I might skip one for the other. So um, if you got one high tide, you're going for it, buddy. So yeah. So um, so the podcast I run is called the When Fishing Podcast. It's a weekly to bi-weekly release, depending on how much I have to say that week. And I talk fishing reports, observations, experimentations, and have occasional guests on. I'm gonna have a really cool guest on pretty soon. Uh, so it's available pretty much everywhere except Apple Music, as far as I know. Um, my so the next thing is going to be my customized forecast. This might seem like a lot of information at first glance, and it's really intuitive to me at this point. The main things I look at are like the top half of it, and then I'll look at the bottom half stuff as I hone in on which days of the week that I want to fish. So this is actually pretty close to the default set of modules that if you click on the fishing forecast or the fishing specialized parameters, you're going to get something really close to this. So I have from top to bottom the sunrise and sunset times, which are really tiny at the top, the wind speed and direction, and they have a lot of wind models on Windy, which is why I like it a lot. I use the GFS 27, and it's done me pretty well. Um, I might get into some of the other ones later. I might just brush up on them. I'm not a meteorologist, so I can't. I'm not going to pretend to be. Uh, the next thing is barometric pressure, air temperature, precipitation, sea surface temperature, moon phase, rise and set, swell size, direction and period, tide, current speed and direction, the lunar chart just for giggles for me, and wind model comparison chart. So the wind model comparison chart is really good. I mean, this is the thing that makes it so you really don't need other apps because you get everybody's using the same wind models. So, or at least they're using one wind model over another. And here you can see just what all all the scientists say. Uh, so now I'm going to run through in order of relative priority what parameters for conditions I look for. So the swell, I'm looking for a C, as people call it, is less than square. So the primary and the secondary swells being equal to or greater than the swell period length is a square swell. So a 5-foot swell at a 5-second period is a square swell, and you can match whatever number and it'll be like that. If there's a secondary swell, it might be a 3-foot primary swell and a 2-foot wind chop. That'll equal up to 5 seconds as a square swell. So in my little boat, I like somewhere instead of a 1-to-1. Obviously, that's what you want to avoid. What I really like is something more of a 3-to-1 of period to swell. So like a 2 feet at 6 seconds, a 3-foot at 9 seconds, a 4-foot at 12 seconds, so on. Although I don't think I would go out after about 5 foot or so. So the next one And the reason I choose these is basically for my own comfort more than the fishing, and comfort and safety. But I actually will get seasick even as a boat owner, so I keep myself on the I try to find some calm seas. So the next one is going to be the wind, the windy wind. That's what we're here for, right? So the wind is just as important as the swell to me. In my locale, we have less wind in the morning, and then the bulk of our wind comes between noon and sunset. So if conditions are otherwise favorable, I'll head out in as much as 10-mile-an-hour consistent winds. But preferably, I launch at dawn with less than 5 miles an hour, 5 knot winds. Preferably, there's no wind in the morning, and you can just fly full speed out of the harbor and you're golden. But it pretty much always slowly builds until it becomes too difficult to drift over reefs or troll in the direction that I want to. And normally, it peaks around, I'll say about 3 p.m. Each day, but you normally kind of get kicked off the water by the wind closer to noon or so, depending on how big your boat is, how stubborn you are, I suppose. So if um, yeah, so if the wind gets over 10 miles an hour or more, the wind swell can pick up pretty good and make it a requirement to start navigating the swells by quartering. So if the swells are going this way, you're going to want to go this way or this way. If you try to drive straight with it, water will come over the back end and water will come over the front end. That's not fun. Been there, done that. And if you try to drive straight into it, more or less the same thing will happen. A lot more on the bow, but yeah, it's not fun. So you really want to do that 45-degree angle thing. So taking a swell head on in a short period can cause about a pound. Um, and yeah, so that's once again, the wind and the swell are sort of safety slash comfort issues for the fishermen. They can affect the fish if they're consistent and driving enough. They can create some current, and we're about to get into that. But a couple of tools to keep in mind for the wind is it'll pay off to do a little research on which wind model will work best for your region. Like I said, GFS 27 works for me for long-term forecasts. It goes out like 7 or 10 days or something like that. So I like to, on my podcast, I pretty much pick out what days I want to fish, and then half the time I don't fish them. Because the weather changes a little bit, it's not perfect at 10 days out, but it's definitely, oh God, you guys can't hear the mower. But yeah, it's okay. I just lost my train of thought. But okay, yeah, GFS 27. So it's a good long range forecast. Here apparently in the Americas, you can actually find all the information that you need on the Windy.app's website for each wind model, which is really nice. And so the one that I recently learned about that's apparently the most accurate, at least for the Americas, is the NAM model. It's more accurate because it takes into account elevation changes like points and islands. So in Southern California, we have, at least where I'm at, I have like Palos Verdes, and then Point Doom, and Catalina, and all these things will, we have pretty quick elevation change. Hello. We have pretty quick elevation change out here in Southern California. Like Catalina's peak elevation is probably like 900 feet up, and it's like 3 miles wide. So it's that kind of thing. And I'll notice around points, the wind will come around a little bit faster. And then if you just go down the coast, it's not gonna be as bad. So I think the NAM model predicts that a little better, but it only forecasts 72 hours out. So it's really good to hone in your game plan as you get closer to the day. So the wind model comparison chart is an amazing feature, and I really think that people should be using it. Rather than jump from app to app or site to site, see what the consensus is, which you're kind of taught to do that as a fisherman, especially in the internet age. You can see all the results of the major wind models on one chart. And so if you see that it's wildly varying, then then they're all telling you that it's predictably unpredictable, and maybe you should sit that one out, boss. So, um, yeah. So moving on to tides and currents. So the the wind and the swell affect the fishermen the most, and the tide and the current are what affect the fish. If I just want to get out fishing and relax, I might disregard everything outside the wind and swell, but understanding the tide and the current will help me to hone in my game plan for a successful day, actually catching fish, instead of just going on a boat ride, going whale watching, which is fine too, sometimes. So, uh, the tide and the current affect different fish slightly differently, but they all like it. So I saw that people are from the Pacific Northwest. I see they're from the Great Lakes. Um, I see some other stuff. So I think that these points will resonate with a lot of different people. I saw somebody's fishing for mahi, tuna, and halibut. So that's uh, exactly what I'm about to get into here. So benthic fish, or fish that relate to structure, like rocks, reefs, oil rigs, etc., are most actively feeding at times with the most water movement. If you're into fishing, you know all about the tide swings and things like that. So during the tide swings is when we can expect the most current movement. It can also be affected by larger coastal currents and smaller currents, wind if it gets a good hold on the water for a number of days, etc. So the current direction can also play a major role. Certain spots just bite a lot better with one direction over another. So you'll show up on a reef, and one day you'll have a north current, and you'll absolutely kill it. And then maybe a week later you go and there's a south current, and you think that maybe even the tide looks like it's going to be the same high tide, but there's just the water's just moving a different way. So that day, you don't catch anything, and you're like, what the hell? I thought this spot was great on a high tide, but sometimes it's bigger than just the tide. So current direction is a major role, and you can find that as a widget or a module or whatever you want to call it in the app. So it's something to keep in mind as you're honing in on your favorite spots. Pelagic fish are fish that relate to open water and currents, water temperature, following food sources around across the ocean rather than relating to bottom structure. They're also subject to feeding based on what the current and tide is doing, but a lot of different fish in the pelagic realm, like tunas and sharks, have a tendency to feed really close, if not on top of the slack tide, like on top of the high tide. So when the food source, like the bait fish and things like that, the anchovies, sardines, mackerel, herring, pogies, wherever you are in the world, when they can no longer ride the current, excuse me, they get stuck in one place, become more vulnerable to ambush. So generally, for both benthic and pelagic creatures, it's best to fish within a week of a new or full moon tide. So when there's the most tidal movement, that's when you want to get out there. So the half moons are still fishable, but those spring tides are more predictably good fishing. So the water temperature is the next thing on the menu. Water temperature, they play a heavy hand in determining the behavior of fish as well. Different seasons may host to different pelagic species, while benthic fish will behave differently throughout the year. Benthic fish have a tendency to benefit from stable water temperatures, and feeding activity will remain consistent as long as the water temps are relatively stable. So locally, a fish for us like the calico bass will remain in local waters year-round, but in the winter they'll hunker down tight to the rocks, and as long as you're fishing really tight to the rocks, you can find them. And then in the summer, when the water temp gets over 65 degrees or so, they'll start chasing bait up top. So during the winter months, Yeah, during the winter months, they'll still be there, 50, 60 degrees, but you're going to be focusing down on top or down on the bottom. So in SoCal, we begin to see pelagic game fish when the water temp gets over 65 degrees. We might see those ocean sunfish year round, which follow the currents and jellyfish as a food source. But when the temps get over 65, we start to see our bluefin tuna and our yellowtail roll in from southern waters. And when the water gets up and over 70, we might see our yellowfin tuna and our mahi. So watching the weekly temperatures for a spot can be a great indicator of fish activity and what you can expect. The new they just launched a sea surface temperature forecasting map, which is what you can see on that slide. Uh, it's now available on the app, and it's great to pair with uh, somebody who does surface temperature photos in like an from the past, like NOAA, so you can see maybe where the fish have been, and then you can perhaps expect where they're going. So um, the next one is barometric pressure. I think that a lot of fishermen should be particularly mindful of the barometric pressure changes, as it can potentially be the dominant factor in your locale. So here in SoCal's coastal waters, we have the previously mentioned stable Mediterranean climate, and I've been staring at that barometric pressure, and it doesn't change that much over here. We've had I've watched it through a couple storms, thinking, okay, the consensus in the fishing community uh, is that when the pressure drops, say here in America, we're gonna use inches. If the pressure drops from 30.0 inches down to 29.6 over the course of a day, get out there, because like the fish are going to act like the world is ending, and they're going to try and eat as much as they can. Case in point, I had a pal who actually went out. We just had a tropical depression that came through Southern California, and he got out the day before, went to a pond that might average like 1 to 3 fish on a normal day, and he and his buddy in a couple hours caught 30 fish. So that was, I was looking at the barometric pressure for that day, and it might have dropped like a tenth or maybe a quarter of an inch, probably about a tenth of an inch, and that caused the fish to really jump. So I'm personally under the impression that in SoCal, tides, wind, water temps, and coastal currents have a much larger effect on the fishing than our relatively mild barometric pressure changes do on a normal basis. So I think that that situation was an exception rather than the norm for my buddy. We might see opportunities like that maybe a few times a year, but while it may seem like a benign factor in sunny SoCal, I've done some digging and it's much more of a factor in some other areas. So take a look at the screenshots of Windy's data for the Chicago airport. This was this week. They had pressure systems moving the barometer half an inch over a couple of days. I was comparing weekly readings this winter to other places around the U.S. like Lake Michigan, Boston, Florida, and noticed the northerly climates would see almost a whole inch of barometric pressure swings over the course of a week, while we won't even see a quarter-inch swing on what we would consider our most turbulent storms. So if you're living in the Great Lakes area, if you're living in the Northeast, perhaps the Pacific Northwest, I didn't look at that, but basically what I realized is Mediterranean climate, it's not crazy. But these other places, I think that you're going to be seeing so many more of those pressure drops that it's going to be, you can really make a habit out of it, of following these pressure drops, more so than you might, following the tide if you're in the Great Lakes. Although the tide and the moon do still play a surprisingly large factor in lakes. So the next thing, solunar charts, solunar charts. The solunar chart is a fascinating little gadget. When you're just getting into fishing, you'll see it everywhere. It can seem like a pretty simple, straightforward way of finding the best time to fish, and it's based on the moon phase and the tide cycle, which is interlocked with the moon phase. And it gives an estimate of feeding activity based on the waxing and waning moon phase and the accompanying strength and I suppose frequency of tides. And it's not something that I personally look at very often anymore. I used to look at it a lot as a freshwater bass fisherman, and I think it does work sometimes. Or I think watching any particular parameter will only take you so far, and this one will take you a certain amount forward. But it's essentially a visualization of the moon phase and tides, and I'm already looking at the moon phase and tides, so it's not totally necessary. It's a little bit redundant, but at the same time, it's a very easy way to look at it and go, like, okay, let's do it. Like, we see 3 fish on that little screenshot. Like, rather than 2, let's jump in while there's 3 fish on the solar chart and see what happens. It can definitely inspire you. And then if you just want to get out and you see that there's it's just a little dead fish, like up on the very end there, you say, F that, I'm gonna prove that shit wrong. So, so that's something to keep in mind. I still have it on there. I plan on putting it in my. I have a fishing log, and so I pretty much put all these parameters into my fishing log for the day, and I'll take a screenshot of the Windy app, and then in the Excel sheet I'll put the date, and I'll put where I fished, and then I'll just start plugging in all the parameters, and at the end of the year, or at the end of 5 or 10 years or whatever, I'll see. Hopefully, I'll see a pattern. So this next slide is how I would typically plan my fishing trip with the Windy app. So let's say it's the middle of the summer here in SoCal. I see the day has an 11 a.m. high tide. The swell is 2 feet at 14, which is stupid flat. It's easy on the stomach. A boat can fly at full speed. So the wind is below 5 miles an hour until about 11 a.m. then slowly picks up to 10 by 2 to 3 p.m. So I can enjoy the morning and probably start for home around noon, maybe even later. The current is moving at 0.2 miles an hour, which is pretty slow. You'll see it in certain areas. It'll be 0.7. You'll see a 1. I'm sure where there's like a lot of islands and locks, you'll get 2-3 miles an hour. I know that the jet stream off of Florida can be running at 3 to 5 miles an hour. So in this instance, it's 0.2 miles an hour, but I've caught fish in similar conditions at this spot, so I'm okay with that. So the water temp is 64, and it's been that way for a couple weeks. The stability should help the fish to have moved into the area or be comfortable in their habits. The barometer's been steady for the past few weeks, and it always is over here, so it's going to make the fish more active. So let's say I know the bluefin tuna are around, and I want to put a big one in the little boat, and I happen to know from a friend where they've been all week, and they happen to be next to my rockfish. So a lot of times they go into the tuna, they go into a crazy feeding frenzy within an hour of high tide. On several occasions, the only surface activity I've seen has been within 10 minutes, within 5 minutes of the high tide, of the peak high tide that's been forecasted. Coincidence? I don't know. So, but I want the backup plan. I want to go reef fishing because tuna also, like, no matter how crazy they are, sometimes they just won't bite. So I'll go fish the incoming tide right next door to the tuna, and they have a wider window, those reef fish. So I'll launch at 6 a.m. At the sunrise. I fish for the reef fish from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then I go to the tuna spot 10:30 to 11:30. I catch all my fish, start the hour ride home before the west wind makes things too uncomfortable. Bless. And it's a perfect day. So the next slide is maybe when you might not want to go. So the screenshot that I have, well, sometimes it's personal taste for conditions when you decide to go boating, and other times it's a safety concern. That's certain sailors are more hardy than others. I know that I'm a fair weather fisherman. Um, I think we all know that at this point. So what you see in the screenshot is I think it was the peak or the very end of the tropical depression slash tropical storm that we had in SoCal. Uh, that was actually the forecast. It ended up not being that crazy, but uh, that I would rather not go out in. I don't know who would want to go out in that. I think you would need a boat that would need a lot of length to get past how square that swell is. So if you see the wind model comparison chart and all the wind models are contradicting each other more than usual, like I said earlier, you might want to sit out the day. The overall forecast confidence is kind of low. And if you're a small boater, you don't want to get caught up in a predictably unpredictable situation. If you see that it's a square swell, it's generally unsafe to go out in a small boat uh, if the length of your hull is less than the length of those swells, then you should uh, probably not be out there if it's a square ocean. If you're a really big boat, don't worry about it, I guess. But still heed caution. So I was out a month ago, and it was forecasted to be 3 to 4 knot winds all morning, and then the usual 10 in the afternoon. And then by 10 a.m., it was blowing 15 to 20 knots, and the wind swell built very quickly to a 3 to 4 foot swell at like a 4 to 5 second interval. And I took on a lot of water. I have a self-bailing hull, so it wasn't a huge issue. But I was doing the tacking, and took a long time to get home. Um, could have been worse for somebody who maybe if it were your first time boating, like you could have gotten in a lot of trouble out there. So at the end of the day, the forecast like everybody can get it wrong. This is not 100%. I heard a quote recently that science only approaches the truth. So some days the forecast can just be wrong, and just know what you're doing as a pilot, have all the necessary safety equipment on board, and be safe. So that concludes my whole thing. If I
Perfect.
have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Um, Let me pick around. Let me see if we collected any in our thing. So, yeah, since you're here in SoCal with us, which model do you feel is the most reflective of our real conditions? I often find this app's local swell period model to be very wrong. So, that was a question from. Uh, so I personally find that I find it to be pretty accurate for the local swell and period. I'm not sure exactly which spot you're talking about. I'm more in I tend to be in the Huntington Beach area, and I, what I have noticed is that um, when I get closer to San Pedro and like Palos Verdes Point, the wind and swell can be wildly different just a few miles apart. Like I was out 2 days ago, and uh, I wanted to see just kind of what was going on after that tropical storm, see how dirty the water was, how quickly it would recover. So I went over, um, and so I went like, you know, um, 5 miles south of Long Beach or 10 miles south of Long Beach, and the swell was something like uh, it was probably like 2 to 3 foot at like 7 seconds. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea. The water was brown. I mean, it was just really bad conditions overall. And then I get over like 5 miles east, and the water is, and the the direction of the swell is going from west to east, and yet for some reason those swells didn't get over like 5 miles east. By the time I got over there, it was probably 2 feet at like 13 seconds, blue water. It was wild. So it does depend. You want to make sure that you're like on top of the spot. You want to make sure that you're also kind of calibrating your own sense of what's going on with the with the forecast, because when you're um, everybody's 2 foot is different. Everybody's 5 foot is a little different, because some people look at a swell and they kind of want to think of it as a 5 foot swell and say like, oh yeah, I was out there in 5 footers today. And like other people like, kind of want to play it down, and like and whether that's going on for them in their personal head is everybody's got something different going on. So you need to calibrate what that is, and what that is for you and what that is for Windy, and I've found that it's consistent. It still gets it wrong. It only approaches the truth. Like I said, science only approaches the truth. Never. So that's pretty much what I have to say as far as the swell and period. I don't know if I think the wind models are only predicting the wind and not the swell. So I don't know if there are other swell model predictors, but the wind models are I believe the GFS 27 is I was actually researching it last night just to make sure I had some facts straight, and it is it is not the most accurate. The most accurate is going to be NAM or HRR, 3Rs. And you can also kind of play around with which one just gives you the most confidence, honestly, because GFS 27 may not be the most accurate in the meteorology world. Like that might not be the consensus pick, but I'm comfortable with it. I think I got comfortable with it a couple of years over the last couple of years, and I just don't feel like switching it. Question from Mark. Jeremy, are you tracking a particular spot or multiple in a day? Yes, I am. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for I like variety. So sometimes I want to just go to the closest spot to me, and so I'll check that out like by default. And sometimes I'm keeping in the back of my head, okay, what if I want to go down to Dana Point and go looking for tuna? Or what if I want to go down to San Diego and look for tuna? What if I want to go out like to Palos Verdes? What if I want to go towards the middle of the Catalina Channel? And so all these spots have different amounts of wind and swell. I've found that the middle of the channel, if you're looking for in Southern California, the oil rigs spot, I've found that sometimes it'll be predicting less wind over there than it is on the inside. I think that I'm not the meteorologist here, but I'm guessing that the wind is doing something, being affected by Palos Verdes, and so there's more wind turbulence coming around the point of Point Furman and stuff like that as it's building out of the west, and so tighter to shore or tighter to Long Beach, it's going to be significantly windier than maybe there is a clean passage of air, or even Catalina protecting it at that oil rig spot. So yeah, sometimes you'll see significantly less wind in one spot over another, and it will, like, I will think, okay, I want to do this today, and then I start bargaining with myself, like, okay, that's not going to work, like that changed. So what else is going to work today? And And I will look at a couple spots to make sure that it's kind of consistent, or I'll look at the wind model to make sure it's consistent. So you can, um, you know, it's good to look at multiple spots, good to look at multiple wind models. So, opinion from Chris. Um, he he says tide shift is the most important thing. I agree with that. Um, says I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not really sure. But uh yeah, tide shift is one of the most important is the most important thing, I would say. And I think current movement is the most important thing. Um, and that's pretty much what it comes down to. But all these things are important. Sometimes one tide is just going to be uh, better for um, it's going to be better one month than the next. And why is that? It's because there's more parameters affecting it, because it's not just the tide. It's a lot of different things going on. So when you get a perfect storm of good things, then uh, then the tide shift might be central to it. Um, so yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Chris. I believe that's it. I believe that's it for my questions. Let's
Yes,
see.
Jeremy, thank you so much. I think I will take it over from here. I'm very excited that we did this.
The sea surface temperature chart is still available, so you can look at make sure that you're updated. But go into like the main map rather than the spot, and then you can toggle with different parameters, and you can see also the current direction. That's a really cool part of the map. So I actually just looked at that yesterday. I don't normally play around with the map too much. I have the sea surface temperature. You guys brought that out a month or two ago. That's been um, and that's a pretty cool. That's a very cool and very helpful feature. See where the water temperature breaks might be, um, and then um, yeah, the current model is also really cool. You can see where there might actually be like an eddy that you might not be able to see, but you might not be able to see it with your eyes, but there might be like a current eddy that's sprung out of nowhere, and you might be able to capitalize on that. But you got to experiment with these things. This is not an absolute truth. Some that might not be, it might not be to the correct latitude, but it gives you a place to start, and it's worth experimenting. So, yeah. So with that said, I think I'm going to hand the microphone back to Kate.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
guys very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think I interrupted you earlier, but sorry for that. So let me show my face again and then hide you. Okay, so I want to thank you for watching, and I want to thank, of course, Jeremy for taking the time to join us, and of course to prepare ahead of time. I wanted to ask you guys and girls, if there are fishing girls out there watching us, what did you think? Is there anything we haven't covered in the particularly this fishing weather for fishing topic? Please let me know, and you can write in the comments of this of the stream, and you can write in the chat. And I encourage you to check out the links in the description of the stream. I think this is all for today. I'm really happy we did this and that you came. And there are going to be more. Maybe next month I'm going to do one more. So stay tuned. I'll keep you posted. So goodbye.